You are listening to the Buried Treasures podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe down below. Like, comment, and share your favorite episode with your friends and family members. And please help us establish and build a masjid in Lombard, Illinois. You can go to supportmu.org to make a contribution. Jazakumullahu khairan. Welcome to the Buried Treasures podcast, brought to you by Masjid Uthman, where I interview a new guest every week to discover their journey. I'm Hamza Warsi. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, jazakumullah khairan everyone for joining us, mashallah. We have a very special guest with us today. He's a hero that wears the cape, the nursing iman, Mawlana Abdullah Syed. How are you doing?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm doing well. I don't think I'm not really that hero, but
well, during the pandemic, the nurses were wearing the capes, right? They were the heroes?
oh, I mean, I think some were wearing the. I mean, I don't think we were wearing the capes, but they had the
You're about to upset a lot of doctors.
They did wear the Superman shirt though.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, they did.
Nice, mashallah. But yeah, Mawlana Abdullah, tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, where were you born and raised? What were you up to during your early days?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala al-mab'uthi rahmatan lil alameen nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So, I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. And for the most part of my life, up until, let's say, till 6th or 7th grade. And then from 6th to 7th grade, my mom decided to move to India. Because at the time, my mom was divorced and she was single. And she wanted to try out a business venture. And so she made me and my sister move to Hyderabad, India at the time. And later on, my grandma came as well. So when I was there in India, we were enrolled in an international school there. And what was interesting about this international school was the fact that there was an accreditation for Cambridge University, and I think there was something called IB International Bachelorette or something. So essentially, if you graduated from there, your transcripts will be accepted in a different in a college in America or a college in England per se. So that was an interesting part. Another interesting part about that international school was the fact that there were Indian students there, but they were not necessarily from. They were not born and raised in India. They were actually born and raised from America, but their parents they had a transfer or something from a job over there to India, from America to India, and one of the reasons is I don't know if you know, but in Hyderabad, there's something called a high-tech city. In high-tech city, they have all these multinational corporations like Qualcomm and IBM. So they were part of that Qualcomm, IBM, and so they ended up moving to India. So essentially, I wasn't I wasn't lacking that American culture. I wasn't lacking that pop culture, mainstream culture from America. It was there, and I was interacting with individuals who came from there as well. So I wasn't really alone in that aspect. But up until the point, I think it was 10th grade. Up until that point, 10th grade, yeah, so I was noticing a change during my 10th grade, right? And it was that spiritual, that internal change. And I couldn't describe it at the time. Maybe if you ask me now, I could tell you exactly, in both sides, in the Islamic sphere and as well as the psychological realm, right? So in Islamically speaking, I remember we went over this when I was in 5th year in Zakariyya. Mawlana Suleiman Mullah, he was teaching us at that time Quran Tarjuma. So when he was teaching Quran Tarjuma, I think he went over this ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah. It was Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhidul yahuda wan nasara awliya. In an akhir al-ayah. So in that ayah, basically, don't take Yahud and Nasara as your allies. And it doesn't mean that you can't be friends with non-Muslims. It was, there are certain categories where you can be friends with non-Muslims, but there wasn't that intimacy. There was not that spiritual type of relationship, that heart to heart relationship.
Mm.
You know, it was like kind of superficial on the surface type of relationship. And plus, all of these Indian kids that I was with, they weren't Muslims per se. Actually, in that school, it was only like a handful of guys who were Muslims, or a handful of guys and girls that were Muslims. There weren't that many Muslims, so there were a lot of Hindus in that school. It was predominantly Hindus, and you know they would celebrate their Hindu festivities like I guess Diwali and Holi. When I was in 10th grade, I wasn't feeling that connection, and I was actually getting a little bit religious conscious because even though I wasn't coming from an alim background or a scholarly background, we were still practicing Muslims. We knew our foundations, our fundamentals. We knew the five pillars of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew what we had to do. Like we had to do certain ibadat. We had to recite Quran. These are things that we knew we had to do those things. But if you told us like, okay, what are the rules of tahara? What are the rules of zakat? I mean, we wouldn't really know. We would have to ask somebody. And so that's what I was going through. And in terms of psychology, I think Erickson puts it in a nice way where he has this he has this theory of psychosocial development, where the fifth stage of psychosocial development, which ranges from 12 years to 18 years, he says that those individuals face identity versus role confusion.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he says. So that's what I was exactly facing. I was facing an identity crisis at that time. So eventually I told my mom, look, I don't think it's going to work out for me. I don't want to be here anymore. Can I go back to America? And she was like, okay, yeah, you can come back to America. It doesn't matter. So we went back to America. All of us, the family came back. And when I was at that time, I was going into 11th grade. My mom, she didn't want me to go to public school. She has this like hatred, I guess, towards public schooling because she herself went to public school.
Mm-hmm.
And she remembered, like, I guess she was kind of traumatized during her time when she was in public school. So, and there was a lot of fitan as well, like a lot of temptations, and she didn't want me to go through that. She put me in online school along with my sister. And that time, online school was in its infancy. It wasn't like we had Zoom or Skype or something like that. Maybe Skype was still coming up. However, in order to contact these teachers, we would have to either email them or phone, call them. And I was just like, I don't want to call them. Why would I call these teachers, right?
Yeah.
It was mainly through email. And, at the time, I didn't even notice, but I was developing a certain phobia. Like, I was getting comfortable with online schooling. I was comfortable in my house, very complacent, but I was developing a phobia, like agoraphobia. That's what they call it. And that's like the fear of open spaces and fear of like populated spaces, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, whenever I had to go to Walmart or Target or any type of gathering, I would get this anxiety. It was very weird. I would get this anxiety. And at the time, I thought it was like, okay, maybe it's nothing. Maybe I shouldn't really talk to anybody about it because it's like normal. I was thinking it was normal. Later on, I learned in nursing school it's not really normal, but you should talk to somebody about it. But I was developing that fear, and eventually I had to tell my mom, like, look, I think it's best if we kind of move away from online schooling and maybe let's look for a private school. So eventually we decided to go to IFS. And the cool thing was like I used to be in IFS from like preschool to all the way to I'm guessing 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
5th grade or 6th grade. I can't remember well, but I went back to IFS for my 12th grade senior year. And the interesting about Islamic school is that when you're in Islamic school, you see these guys. And these guys have been together for so many years, like, day one, literally day one, right? From preschool all the way up to like senior year. So when you're like an outsider like me, it was kind of like hard for me to make friends with these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
However, there were some positives as well in IFS. Like, there's a moment where you get to pray in a congregation, like Dhuhr Salah during your school days. And then there's Islamic studies there. So there's some positives as well in an Islamic school, but there's also some challenges as well. But at the same time, I remember my uncle, he was attending these weekend classes, and it was called Darul Hikmah, right, at Masjid Mustafa, I believe. That's Westmount, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was like, wasn't it Sundays?
Saturdays.
Yeah, I was attending those classes in Darul Hikmah, and in Darul Hikmah, I was exposed to these fine scholars. I was exposed to, for example, Mufti Azaz. I remember you remember that, like Nur Ida, that book, the English book.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would always ask me for that book, but I would never give it to you. But
10 years later, still asking.
he's still asking. But yeah, I was doing that book, and initially I used to do that book with Mufti Azaz. And Mufti Azaz at the time, he was transitioning to Sharia board, and then he introduced us to another teacher, Mufti Abrar, and I think he came back from South Africa at that time. I'm kind of fuzzy on the details. But the way he was introduced to us was that, I have this classmate from South Africa, and he introduced Mufti Abrar. So at that time, I didn't even know he was associated with IAE. I didn't know he did his Alim course in IAE. So it was all a blur to me. Afterwards, there was people like Mufti Kamani, Mufti Hussein Kamani, Mufti Mubin Kamani. And then we had Mawlana Bilal. He was teaching Aqidah at the time. So I was exposed to all of these sciences. I was exposed to all of these scholars, traditional scholars, and it opened up my mind. Like, it opened up my mind toward Islamic sciences. Because all this time I was thinking it's like only restricted to the 5 pillars, ibadat. There's not really much to it, like wudu, all of that stuff, you praise Allah. But I didn't know there was like a whole science behind, like, okay, Arabic, and there's a whole science about fiqh, right? There's different schools of thought. There's Hanafi, there's Shafi, there's Maliki, there's Hanbali. I didn't know all of these things. So it was great to have that exposure. And I was doing this while I was in high school. At the end of my high school, I had to like kind of make a decision. What should I do now? Should I go apply to college or university, or should I just continue this journey in learning Islamic sciences? And I wanted to do both. But I was still like confused because, I really wanted to go to college, because the whole goal in my life that time, and still is to like go to college and then get a job and then take care of my mom, because my mom was essentially the breadwinner in our family. She would always take care of us, and she would always take care of us financially. And it kind of lacked in the sphere of emotional and that, emotional help and that social help, but she would try her best. She couldn't be everywhere at the same time. And I understood that. And so I really wanted to take care of her. It was like, okay, you know what? I'm grown up now. I'm like almost 18. I need to take care of my mom. And that's the mind I was going through. But, my mom, she really wanted me to be an alim. That was her dream. Her dream was like, I want my son to do khutbahs. I want my son to do speeches. Please, Masha Uthman, don't make me do speeches here.
I was about to say, I was like, you don't do any of those things.
Sheikh Harun always asked me to do khutbahs here. So, but, actually, she named me after, I think, a scholar. Perhaps he was a scholar, or he was just a khatib at the time. And his name was Abdullah, and she was just enamored during her college years by his speeches. So that's why she named him Abdullah. So that was her dream. She wanted me to do alim course. So, I was like, okay, you know what? I don't want to upset my mom. Like, let me do this. Let me do alim course. So I started doing mashra with certain scholars. And amongst the scholars was Mufti Abrar. Mufti Abrar, at the time I was really close to him, and I still can approach him, but he was the one scholar who gave me the best advice. He was like, look, I know, you want to go to South Africa, you want to go to England, you want to go to Pakistan, right? That's some of these teachers you see, that's where they're from, and that's why you're impressed. But why don't you start off locally? Why don't you go to IAE first, do part-time college, and see what's working out for you? Like, try to see what's going on and see for yourself if this is what you want to do long term. And I thought that was the best advice. So eventually what happened was that I went to IAE, in that summer. I graduated, I got my diploma, I went to IAE, and I remember this like exactly, like vividly. I went to IAE, I had this tight shirt on, I had this jeans on, and I was looking fresh. I had that fresh haircut. I was like, man, let's go to IAE, do my application. So I went there. I didn't know where the building was. I had never been to IAE in my life, right? This is my first time. So everything was confusing to me. So I first went to the masjid, and I didn't know it was still being built. But I went there and I thought, okay, even though I saw cements and bricks and everything, and I know there was no prayer rug, I was still assuming that, okay, maybe there's an office in the back. But no, it was closed. So then I saw some students walking in and out in this warehouse on the side. So I was like, okay, let me go check that area out. So I went inside. Eventually, I asked some students, like, do you know where the office is? I want to apply to the school. So they were like, okay, yeah, there's an office right there. Why don't you go there? So I went there, and the first individual I see, at the time I didn't know, but the first person I see is Mawlana Salim. So at the time I thought he was just some uncle. And the way I addressed him was like, uncle, I'm here for Alim course. I want to do Alim course here. Is there any space for me in this program? And he was like, yes, there is space for you. Yeah. And if there's no space, don't worry about it. We'll make space for you. So then he just handed me a piece of paper. I signed, I filled out whatever I needed to fill out. And I was just like relieved how easy and how unorthodox it was, because prior to that, I was actually applying to COD. A COD is very formal. You have these entrance exams. You have to do like math. Oh God, math. And then you had like English. So you had to do all of these entrance exams in order for them to place you in their gen eds or something like that. So it was like a breath of fresh air when I applied to IIE. So afterwards, I went, it was like my first year now, my first year in IAE. And I remember my first day, I still wore a shirt. This time I wore a hoodie, so a little bit conservative. And and I wore jeans, and I looked like a college kid. Like I had my backpack on and everything, still had that fresh cut. Nowadays I don't do that often. But I went inside, and I was like thinking to myself, okay, I was asking around, where's the classroom? Like, where are the seats? Where are the chairs? Where's the board? Like, where do I see these things? Like, I mean, I was expecting a college classroom, but they were like, okay, you need to go look for Mawlana Ubaidullah. And at the time, I don't know who Mawlana Ubaidullah was. So I've been asking around. I'm looking for Mawlana Ubaidullah. Finally, I find him. And, Mawlana Ubaidullah was like, yes, don't worry, we'll start class soon. So he told me to sit on the side, and this was in the Musalla area in that warehouse, right? So he made me sit on the side in the corner, and then I remember clearly, like there was two other guys who came too. There was one guy, as we all know, Mufti Nabil, and then another guy, Bashir, right? So he came, and it was us three initially, because I think, there were still out-of-state students that were still coming. So I think we were just a bit early. I remember the first lesson that Mawlana Ubaidullah taught us that day, and it was very unofficial, very like, not really a formal class. It was kind of informal. But he taught us one hadith, and that hadith was إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, right? A famous hadith we all know. So he taught that. And at the time, I was like, I didn't find the value at that time. Later on, like when I think about it now, I was like, man, subhanAllah, that's the best lesson to have. And especially in the beginning of the Alim course, is like about your intentions. Like, what is your intention by doing this? And so I remember we sat there, and he just made us recite that hadith like 10 times. And then he made us translate it 10 times. And then finally he started explaining. And that was like my first day in the first year. Afterwards, then I got to be introduced with Mawlana Kamal, Mawlana Abdul Rahman, Mawlana Sulaiman, all the other teachers, Mawlana Abdul Hakim.
Just to describe a little bit, you're walking into a madrasa wearing American Eagle hoodie, Abercrombie and Fitch, with some like side part, ripped up jeans.
No, it was not ripped up.
It wasn't ripped up.
I was decent in that aspect.
It was just like faded.
It was
a little bit. Or was it one of those like JNCO?
No, I didn't like ripped up jeans too. Like it didn't look fashionable to me. I had like those, those regular jeans. There's like regular
just standard jeans. Okay.
Yeah, regular tight jeans.
So was there a sense of discomfort wearing something that possibly a lot of other people weren't wearing. Everyone's, I'm assuming, is wearing like some type of like qamis, like a kurta or a thobe or something of that nature. Did you feel out of place at all?
Honestly speaking, I really didn't mind. Like, it was not a big deal to me. It was just like, okay, yeah, these guys are wearing thobes and, qamis, kurtas. I should probably start wearing those. Like, I started thinking like maybe I should wear this instead. But at the time I thought it was like, okay, these are, for me, it was like normal clothes. For me, it was
Yeah.
like normal, you know how it's subjective, right? It's like, your normal is different from my normal. So at that time I was like, okay, this is normal for me. I don't know why it's a big, like, but why is it a big deal for you if I'm wearing this, right?
Yeah.
So, I didn't find it like that, but I realized that, okay, you know what? Maybe if I shouldn't, maybe I should start wearing like a thobe next time to these classes, which I had some, but I never really thought too much about it. Yeah.
Because sometimes there's like a notion or understanding amongst individuals that, oh, when you go study deen or when you're in a madrasa, that there's some sort of uniform policy that you kind of have to adhere to or something of that nature. But for you,
Yeah.
it was just like, no, Abercrombie Fitch, American Eagle, the very tight, skinny jeans, like mashallah. I don't know how you sat down.
It wasn't that
I don't know how
tight.
you sat down in those in class.
Oh man,
anyways.
painful, but
Painful but worth it.
painful but worth it. Worth it for that hadith. You know what I'm saying? But no, like, even like subhanallah, even like Mawlana Abdullah, the teachers didn't really mind it. Like, I mean, I didn't get the feeling that, oh, like he's making me feel bad because I'm wearing something else, right?
Mashallah.
So it didn't feel like that. Even like, I would get some eyes on me. Like, some Hifz kids would like look at me and be like, dude, who's this kid? Right?
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like, it wasn't like, like, like one guy in the corner saying, what are you wearing? What are you doing over there? It wasn't like that. But
Okay.
it was good. It was nice. I mean, I didn't even had that notion because I wasn't even coming from that that background where, like, oh, when you're going to a madrasa, this is what you're supposed to wear, So I wasn't really taught that, or I wasn't grown up in that environment. So you have to understand, this was all new for me. So
mashallah.
first year was like a huge, I guess you can say, kind of like a culture shock.
Did you have any like prior knowledge in Arabic? I know you were taking class at Al Hikmah,
Yeah.
but were they also teaching Arabic or were they just teaching specific sciences?
So Darul Hikmah, they were actually teaching everything in English.
Okay.
The teachers would recite it and they would say it in Arabic, but it was never like a requirement for the students at that time to learn Arabic. It was just like, okay, have some grasp in fiqh and aqidah, and that was like the maqsad, like, have some sort of understanding about these sciences. I did take Arabic and IFS, but those IFS, like, IFS and CP, say the Arabic
like Muslim
classes.
school Arabic.
Actually, at the time in IFS, that's when I met Brother Sal Qadri, right? So I remember Brother Sal Qadri at the time, he was teaching AP English, I believe, in IFS. And then they gave him Arabic level 3, right?
Yeah.
And when he got Arabic level 3, he noticed that I was taking Arabic level 1, and the only reason I was taking Arabic level 1 was because I just wanted to get my A's, right? But I didn't tell Brother Saad this. I didn't tell Brother Saad because I had a pristine, perfect GPA, that 4.0 GPA.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep it there. If I took Arabic level 3, I don't know what is going to happen in that class. I wasn't good at Arabic. So I was learning Bait and, Kursi.
Kitabu Zaydan.
Kitabu Zaydan. Hadha al-kitab,
Yeah.
So I was learning those things. I was happy. I was living the life, Then later on, I was like, I should have really focused on Arabic more so because I was going to go to Alim course,
Yeah. So that first year that you're joining this madrasa program on like the wishes or wants and the desires of your mother wanting you to pursue these studies, mashallah. Were there, you mentioned some difficulties that you faced kind of getting accustomed, the quote unquote culture shock. that was present there. Was there anything else that kind of stood out to you?
What stood out to me was like how traditional and like very unconventional the classroom settings were, where the teacher is sitting on the floor, you're sitting on the floor, you have like a floor desk, right? And then you have your kitabs, and basically the whole tartib and the whole nidam of it, right? The system of it. It was very ajib to me because all this time in my life, I've been going through like, regular secular type of schooling. So it was very unconventional for me to like sit there on the floor and recite your whatever sabak or whatever lesson that we were going over. We would have to like, they would first test us, like, they would test us a little bit, and then you have to like, afterwards they will start teaching, right? And it was very unconventional. So I thought that was very unique, especially like I remember this one time when it was Mufti Yasser, right? I don't know if I mentioned his name, but he was also teaching us in first year. And Mufti Yasser was so intimidating. He still is intimidating, but I mean, I get intimidated because mashallah, he's a very knowledgeable, mashallah, very, the man who knows his stuff, right? Without a doubt, mashallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put lots of barakah in his ilm. But, when I was, especially in first year, when you're just starting off and you see like an individual like him and he's testing you and he's like grilling you on certain things and you don't know anything, it's like very intimidating, right? Yeah. So I remember exactly, like we were doing, I think, Lisan al-Arab at that time. And Lisan al-Arab is like, it's a good book, but it has so many vocabs, like so many vocabs. And I would always complain, like, why are we learning so many of these vocabs? Like, and he would make us memorize all of those vocabs. I think it was like 20 vocabs per day, like 30, 50. And at that time, that was a lot for me. Like coming from level 1 Arabic to like learning 50 vocabs a day. Like, please spare me. So yeah, he would test us on that. And how he would do it was like he would test us like in a sequence. Sometimes he would randomize it because he noticed that we got the pattern. So he would randomize it, and that would be like troublesome because then we can't memorize that portion. You're counting like, okay, 5 there, 5 there. This is going to be my 5. Yeah. So he started to catch on, and he's like, okay, you start. Okay, now you start. And now, you're like, oh God, you have to learn the whole thing now. Right. So, but it was intimidating. And that was like one interesting thing about Alim course. Like, I remember I was like, typically it wouldn't be like this in a regular schooling. I mean, yeah, sure. They would test you, but the testing wouldn't be like orally. Oral testing was very different. Like it was something out, like I wasn't used to. So yeah, that was pretty much my first year.
So take me through your second year, because there was a lot of interesting things that happened then.
I mean, before I get to the second year, I just remember this. I mean, first year, I remember, oh man, we were known as the party goers.
Mashallah. Mashallah.
Party goers.
Where would you guys go party on that random lake?
No,
that you guys went and explored?
We did a lot of fishing. And we were supposed to do a lot of nahu and sarf, but maybe we're doing both at the same time, right? So
I don't think so. I mean, we all know. Just kidding.
But I think the memorable moment that year was we went to Cedar Point, right? We did that Cedar Point trip. Oh man, with the core class, right? What is it? It was me, Nabil, Yusuf, Mahfouz, Uthman, Sheikh Uthman Fuad, he likes to be known as that. Lashkarwala. You should get him on.
I've been trying, man. We had a mishap in scheduling the last time he was in town.
Dude, inshallah, definitely.
On my part.
But yeah, we all went. Inshallah. And I think I was really happy about that trip because that was a trip that I kind of planned it out. I was the one who kind of instigated everybody. Let's do this, man. Let's all go.
Amir Saab, mashallah.
I was the Amir Saab for that. But it was so fun. I mean, we had a lot of, I think that first year I made one of my closest friends were in that first year. Till this day, we still keep in touch. We still talk. If I have any like personal or any type of issues, I would talk to those guys without a doubt. And yeah, I mean, I remember like after that trip, everybody, I'm telling you guys right now, everybody in IAE, they started trying to do that trip again. I'm not naming names, but there are several people who were trying to copy us, going to Cedar Point. But that trip was really fun. So yeah, second year, right?
Yeah.
So second year was also, it was an interesting year. That was a year that we had an interesting teacher, one ustad that we can never forget about, Mufti Wasim Khan. And subhanallah, at the time he was very strict with us. He was very stern with us. And I really appreciated that because it made us want to improve. It made us want to be better ulama, like be better students of knowledge, right? So I remember like he would always talk about his days in Alim course. He would talk about his moments and his times with his teachers, and that would always fascinate me because the relationship he had with his teachers, it was very fascinating. And one of the interesting things about second year for me was the fact that that was the year I did my first Umrah, and I did my Umrah with Mufti Wasim, Mawlana Bilal, Mawlana Abdurrahman. I believe Mawlana Sulaiman was in that group as well. And I had some good friends, some close friends like Mufti Nabil, Mawlana Zishan, Mufti Zishan, and then Mawlana Ahsan, right? I had those friends who were with me, and it was fun because that was the time where Mufti Wasim, he took me, and I remember, I think it was Nabil at the time, he took us and he would introduce us and expose us to these other scholars from different parts of the world. So I remember we met right in front of the Kaaba, we met Mufti Taha Karan. That was the first time I met Mufti Taha Karan. And he was teaching us, or he was teaching us about the 4 types of teachers at the time. I can't remember exactly the 4 types. I feel I'm a bad student, but but he was teaching us about the 4 types of teachers, and I was just enamored. I think the main thing that I was getting from that was like the way he would explain it. It was like phenomenal. He had the best way of explaining things, and it would just sit in your head. I remember he also asked Mufti Taha Karan to like come for lunch or something, and I think it was Tazij we had. And then Mufti Taha Karan brought one of his friends, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but later on I found out it was Mufti Mas'ud from Azadville.
MashaAllah.
So I met these 2 individuals, and it was just fascinating. I would just listen, like, how I would listen to these podcasts. I would listen to Mufti Wasim, and I would listen to Mufti Taha Karan and Mufti Mas'ud, and they have these scholarly debates. And to me, I was like, man, I want to be like that. I want to engage intellectually like that. It was so fascinating. It was so inspiring. And then afterwards, Mufti Wasim was like, he told me and Nabil, like, hey, you guys want to go see Sheikh Sabuni? And I was kind of like surprised for a second. I was like, Sheikh Sabuni? Sheikh Muhammad Ali Sabuni, the guy who wrote Safat al-Tafasir? Like, I thought, usually we read books, who passed away, right? You never have that chance to meet them. But man, we had the opportunity to actually meet Sheikh Muhammad Ali Sabuni in his house. And man, subhanAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward Sheikh Muhammad Ali Sabuni. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward and bless those 2 individuals. I mean, Mufti Taha Karan, those 2 have recently passed away. But they left a huge impact on me. Like, that was probably the main, or one of the reasons why I wanted to make a move to South Africa. I remember, because after that entire Umrah trip, I asked Mufti Wasim, like, what can I do to get to South Africa? Like, I need to know how to transfer to South Africa, because I saw these individuals, I saw how amazing these individuals were, and I wanted to be exposed to more scholars. And so I was like, I need to travel. I want to go out. And so Mufti Wasim, he told me that year, that was second year, like about to end. Second year was about to end, and he told me like, okay, well, go to third year, do your third year, but focus on 2 extra kitabs. Focus on Usul al-Shashi and focus on Kanz al-Daqa'iq. So I was like, okay. And then he was like, on top of those 2 books, also focus on your Urdu, right? And my Urdu was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's still bad. But but you know, I was like, okay, yeah, you know, I'm gonna do that. My heart was set in stone. I'm like, okay, third year is gonna be the year where I'm gonna work hard, and I'm gonna try to transfer, work on these books, and I'm gonna try to transfer to South Africa. So then third year comes along, and you know, third year it was hard because I was doing more books than I was supposed to. Like I was doing essentially I was doing 2 usul al-fiqh books. So usul al-shashi is one usul al-fiqh book, and then we were doing al-mujaz. So that was another usul al-fiqh book. So, and then I had to keep up with balaghat al-wadiha, which is muhakama. He would teach us that. I think we also had arabiyatul lin-nashi'in, which Mawlana Kama also taught us. So we had a lot of books that we had to cover. And then Mawlana Abdullah, he was teaching us Mukhtasar Tafsir Ibn Kathir. So there was a lot of things. So I was working really hard, and I was trying really hard. And at the same time, I heard from one individual that Mawlana Aziz, he's doing first year. He's teaching first year at nights for certain students, right? And I remember that class. That class had Abdul Wahab, Imad. Mashallah, Imad, he's a pharmacist now, so
Mashallah.
he graduated.
Omar Osman.
Omar Osman, yeah, Omar Osman was there. I think Faraz.
Farhan. Oh yeah, Faraz was there too.
Faraz was there too.
Yeah.
Subhanallah, they were a good group of
Hafiz
those guys.
Mushtaba.
Hafiz Mushtaba, he was there. They were good group of people. Yeah, and Uzair Bhai.
Can't forget Uzair Bhai.
No, we can't forget him, man. He was the sweetheart.
Mashallah.
It was a good group of classmates. Yeah, they never let me feel like I was an outsider, even though I was kind of an outsider to that class.
Mm-hmm.
And even Mawlana Aziz, he was happy to have me, right? And since I was a little bit of a higher level student, Mawlana Aziz has this thing that he has to test me on everything. like he would just randomly do like some Quduri Ibara, and apparently I would have to know that, right? So I would be like, Mawlana Aziz, I don't know. And I could see the disappointment, but oh man. But alhamdulillah, I love that exposure. Like I love the fact that I was honored that he would test me like that, because it felt like, okay, you know what? At least he's not trying to make I don't know, like dumb it down for me, or he's not trying to make me feel that I'm a student that doesn't like challenges. He would always try to challenge me. And the fact is, even though he would challenge me, Mawlana Aziz, he would actually explain it. If I don't know, he would explain it afterwards. And he would help me out. So the main reason why I was in that, it was because I heard that Mawlana Aziz, he was teaching Urdu as well, right? And he was teaching Urdu and Arabic or something like that. So I wanted to get my Urdu straight. So I was like, okay, Mawlana Aziz is the perfect teacher for that. His Urdu is phenomenal. So let me go to Mawlana Aziz at nighttime. So it was jam-packed. My third year was like, voluntarily, I made it really jam-packed. I had to do my IIE curriculum. Then I had to do these 2 kitabs on my own. Then I had to also do classes with Mawlana Aziz. So it was a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it's like day and night.
Day and night, yeah. Day and night, it was hard. And towards I remember towards, I think close to the end, I was just burning out. I was burning out. And at the end of third year, I was thinking to myself, well, I don't know. I barely finished Usul al-Shashi. I think I did about 3/4 of it. Mm-hmm. And that is because I had some help. Like I had help from Mawlana Sulaiman. He would explain certain things that I didn't understand. I had help from Mufti Yasser. I also had help from, Mawlana Saleh Basir. At the time, he was doing Mishkat. And he would help me as well. So I had some help. And then the main help that I got was from the recordings from Mawlana Zuhair Rouhani Bazi. I don't know those recordings, but he has recordings for a lot of Darsi Nizami kitabs. So I was listening to him. So first of all, he speaks, all of his lectures are in Urdu. So I was getting my Urdu from him, and then also I was learning a lot from him, like Usul Shashi. But unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to touch Kanzul Daqaiq. I didn't get a chance to even do that book. So I felt kind of hopeless. Like, you know what? I don't know if I'm prepped for Zakariyya, you know? And I remember exactly like during that time, I was so set on going to IIE for the 4th year that I even bought all my books from Al Balagh for the 4th year. And then right after I bought all my books, a couple of days after, Mufti Wasim calls me. And it was like one of those like wellness checkup, follow-up calls, you know. He called me and he was like, "How you doing? How's everything? How are you feeling?" And finally he asked me the question, "Are you going to Zakariyya? Are you still planning to go to Zakariyya?" So I was like, Mufti Saab, you know what? I didn't do those kitabs that you told me. Like I almost completed Usul Shashi, but I didn't do Kanz al-Daqaiq that you told me. And my Urdu is not as good. And there's a funny story about my Urdu. um, I don't know if I should say this, but
Maybe you should.
I remember like when I was doing my Urdu lessons with Muaziz, right? Finally, I asked Muaziz, so Mawlana Aziz, how's my Urdu? And Muaziz knew my plan. Muaziz knew what was my intention for attending his class. He knew I was trying to go to Zakariyya. So he was like, you know, Abdullah, maybe you shouldn't go to Zakariyya. And I was like, oh, shoot.
The Urdu was that bad.
It was that bad.
It's okay. My Urdu's terrible too.
So I was just like, oh man, dude. Okay, it's that bad, huh? So yeah, so I told Mufti Wasim at that time in that phone call, like, I don't think my Urdu is that good. I don't know if I'm prepped for this. Mm-hmm. So he was like, okay, you know what? Don't give up. Why don't you do this? And this is up to you. Why don't you repeat your 3rd year in Zakariyya? Like, you know, do those kitabs in Zakariyya, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't mind being held back 1 year. And at the time I was like, you know what? It's not a bad idea. Actually, it would be beneficial for me. I'll be a solid scholar. So I was like, okay, let's do this. So, you know, my mind was set, right? Mm-hmm. So then I started that whole visa process. And man, that visa process is terrible. Like there's so many things you have to go through. Like you have to do the police thing, the police background check. You have to go to this one embassy. The embassy wants you to get vaccinated and, you know, all of that stuff. Yeah. That's a whole nother. I was like, when I was doing it, I was like, man, dude, everybody does this before they go to Zakariyya. Like, dude, oh man, I didn't know. But I mean, at that point I was there and, you know, and I remember Mawlana Jamal Khalid, he was also, I didn't even know this, but like he also was trying to go to Zakariyya at the same time. Mashallah. So he was helping me as well. So we both were getting all of our things. We were like, check marking all the things that we needed to do for getting our visa. Eventually, I got the 3-year visa, alhamdulillah. And, you know, right when I bought the ticket and right when I was about to board that flight, Mufti Wasim calls me again. And he's like, yo, Abdullah, whatever you do, do not repeat the year. Do not repeat that year. And I'm like, Mufti Wasim, you told me to repeat it. Like, no, try to go for the higher year. Go for the 4th year. And at that time, the 4th year is the 5th year in Zakariyya, right? Because they had a 7-year seminary school, right? So he was like, yeah, whatever you do, do not repeat. And this is right before I board the flight. So I was like, okay, now I'm nervous. Like I was already set to repeat the year. Now I'm like, oh God, okay. So I went on that flight and now I'm like thinking to myself, oh my goodness, okay, let's do this. I was prepping myself mentally. Eventually I get there, you know, I got a hookup from Mufti Wasim, you know, mashallah. Mufti Wasim has this close friend named Mawlana Shoaib Bandor. And one of the things about the Bandor family is that, and I found this out later on, the Bandor family used to take care of or used to do khidmah of Mawlana Zakariyya Khan Dalwi, right? And subhanallah, that whole family, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them, because man, they always do khidmah. They always do khidmah without a doubt. They will try their best to do your khidmah. And I always felt bad asking him for favors, because he's one of those individuals who will never say no.
Inshallah.
So it was just like, man, I kind of felt shy. I felt shy for him, you know? So but he was a great individual. He would always pick me up, and he picked me up that day. The first time I met him, he picked me up, and we went to his house first, and he gave me he let me stay in his house. He gave me a room or something like that, and I stayed. And subhanallah, man, the whole South Africa vibe is very different. It's like, it's been a while I've been to a different country, so I was just enamored by like, oh man, this looks so exotic. This is like this is so cool. I'm in South Africa.
So foreign.
This is so foreign, right? Like, I'm like, I always dreamed about it, but it was Johannesburg, and Johannesburg is not really a vacation type of place. But I didn't care. I was like, dude, I'm out. I'm out by myself.
Was that the first time you traveled alone?
That was my first time being alone. Yeah, traveling alone. So I was just like so happy at the time. Later on, I started crying, but like, we'll get to that point. We'll get there. I had this euphoria, So, then I was like, okay, I remember he takes me to Zakariyya. And that's the first time I see Zakariyya. I'm like, yo, this is where Mufti Azaz studied. This is where Mufti Azim, Mufti Minhaj, Mufti Muhammad Wasim Khan studied from this place, dude. I'm going to see more Choksi. Like, I'm so happy. Like,
You've heard all the stories.
I've heard all the stories like a billion times. Like, I know their birth dates by now. Like, date of birth for Mal Choksi right now. I don't know, by the way. But, but I mean, that's how many times I heard those stories. And I was like, I was so excited. And I walked in, and it's huge. Like, you're so used to like IIE, and you're just used to that one building, that 1300 building. When I walked into Zakariyya, it was a very different vibe, a very different, like, it was so massive. It was so expansive. Like I walked in, I was like, I was lost, I was thinking, this is like Hogwarts, man. This is so big, where, how do you get to your class on time? Like, half the time I think I would have to jog or run, so, I mean, but I was so excited. I didn't really care. The only thing that I was worried about and anxious about is like, okay, now I'm here, I really want to like get into the year that Mufti Wasim told me in the last minute I need to get into. So I'm worried now. So, there was a few days before the Dakhila exam. And those days were fun because I got to meet with some North American students. Like, for example, there was my roommate, Mawlana Asif. Mashallah, till this day, we still keep in touch. He was my Canadian roommate. And at the time, he didn't know me. I didn't know him. But since I was like a North American, I was like I was from America, everyone was like telling me, why don't you go talk to Asif? Why don't you talk to Asif? Because like, this guy, he usually does khidmah for all the North Americans, right? He was kind of like unofficial, but official Amir of the North Americans, right? So, I went up to him. I was like, can you help me around? Like, I don't know this place. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know who to talk to. And so he helped me out a lot. And I found out later on, like the second day, third day, he was like, he rented out a room, right? And it was one of those rooms where it was kind of like privileged within the madrasa vicinity. And he rented out a room. You had to pay a certain amount of money, and you also had to pay for electricity, right? Because in madrasa, like in the regular dorms, they would turn off your electricity, I think at 10 or 11 p.m., somewhere around there. They would turn off the room's lights, but if you wanted to study, you could always study in the mutalaqa. You can always go there and study. That will be open the whole night. But I remember he rented that room, and he was like, since you're here, you want to help me out, clean this room up? So we were cleaning that room up, and when we cleaned that room up, I eventually asked him, like, look, I noticed that you have this whole room to yourself. Would you mind if I would also be with you, like be your roommate, and we can split the rent and the utilities together. And he was like, at the time he was like, I don't know this guy. Like, like, should I trust him?
Were you still wearing like an American Eagle hoodie?
No. That time I had my, I had my senses, um, but yeah. So I was like, do you mind if I stay with you?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, you know what? Let me do mashra. Let me go talk to some of those stuff and see if this is a good thing for me, right? As if this is going to be good for me. So I was like, okay, yeah, take your time, no rush. Even if you say no, it's okay. Like, I understand. I'm a new guy, right? Eventually, he said yes, right? But he was like, he was ready with all his conditions. Like, he was ready with his list. And I was like, you know what? No problem. You won't. I'm just happy that I have one roommate, and I get to stay in a room, and I have certain privileges in that room. Because the special thing about that room was also like the Negran. He was a little bit nicer than other Negrans. Other thing was like, you would also, that room was located in the building of where the Dora students would stay. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting area. Afterwards, it was time for the Dakhla exam. And the Dakhla exam, I was like getting very anxious. I don't think I showered for a long time. I was so like out of it.
That's a lot of information, Mawlana.
That was a lot of information. I didn't shower. Yes. No, I remember, like, I was so nervous. I was sweating. I was really, really anxious because, like, this is finally you're doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we always talk about it. We dream about it. I remember, like, I want to just go off on a tangent a little bit, but I remember, like, when I was in IAE, we would go on these Darul Hikmah retreats, right? And Des Plaines. And you would hear these stories, like, exotic stories about Sheikh Hamza Maqbool going to Pakistan, going to Mauritania. Then you hear stories about Mawlana Mufti Hussain Kamani, like how he was, he was studying in England and how hard, like, it was hard for him. And then obviously Mawlana Bilal, how hard it was for him when he was studying in Pakistan. So when you hear these stories, you just get enamored by it. There's this rush when you hear these stories. Mm-hmm. Finally, like, you're living it, you're doing it, right? So it's like, dude, I'm here now. I can't go back. I cannot go back empty-handed. I gotta get in, right? So yeah. I'm so nervous. So I I'm like really nervous. I sat there in that area where the teacher's there, the designated teacher to conduct your Dakhla exam. And, subhanAllah, that teacher, later on, I realized why Mufti Hussein told me to go into the higher year instead of the lower year. That teacher ended up being Qari Rashid Dabelia, right? So Qari Rashid Dabelia, he's a very sweet individual. He taught me Mishkat Thani. That was the book he taught me. And he's a very sweet individual, very, very polite. They say that he is one of the most... They say that Qari Rashid Dabelia is Mawlana Choksi's favorite student when he was teaching in Dabel. And Mawlana Choksi's favorite student in Zakariyya is Mawlana Sulaiman Mullah. That's what they say. I don't know how true it is, but I think it's true because the relationship they have, I always see them hanging out like best friends. So Qari Rashid, man, I mean, I was just so impressed with him. I mean, I love the man, and he was so nice to me. He was like, look, what do you want me to test you on? Tell me what you learned. So, like, he was gauging where I was at, what I studied, and all that stuff. And he was like, okay, let's do that then. Okay, he opened up like the first, or not the first page of Surah Al-Baqarah, but like that'll be too easy. But like, one of, like, in the middle. Mm-hmm. Of Surah Al-Baqarah, he opened that and he was like, okay, read that and then translate it and then do a little bit of tafsir. So I did that. Afterwards, I told him I did Hidayah in third year. Usually they do Hidayah in the fourth year. So, because in the third year they do Kanzul Daqa'iq and I was supposed to do Kanzul Daqa'iq. So I told him I did Hidayah And he was like, okay, that's fine. Just grab a hidayah and I'll test you. And he opened up the first, like, I think the first page of Kitab al-Salah. He opened that up and he told me, do the same thing. Just read it, translate it, and then just explain what you understood from it. And that was it. That was my Dakhla exam. And I was like, oh man, I mean, he didn't give any feedback while I was doing all of this, right? So I was thinking, oh man, did I fail? Because he didn't say anything to me. And I was just still nervous. And I went back, I sat down with my roommate, and my roommate was like, how did it go? And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if I'm going to be your classmate, bro. Because he was supposed to be in the same class if I ended up passing that dakhla. So then he was like, don't worry about it. Who tested you? And I was like, Qari Shidabila, you made it, bro. Don't worry about that. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, don't worry. And so eventually I did make it, you know? And I realized afterwards that Qari Shidabila, he's a lot nicer in terms of testing and examination. He's a very nice individual. And the teacher and he usually tests individuals who are trying to go for the higher years. Like, let's say he starts from the Nurul Anwar year all the way up to like Dora year. So he would test those individuals. And then the individual who would test for the lower years, he's a little bit strict. He's a little bit kind of stern on that matter. And so that is why I think Mufti Wasim told me, like, dude, try to go for that, because that teacher, I mean, I think he told me, but I don't think he said it, but like he was just like immediately try to go for that, right? But then I realized by myself that, oh, okay, that makes sense now why he said it. So that was my dakhla for my 4th year in Zakariyya, which is 5th year. And that year was the hardest year I remember in my entire Alim course. That was the year where I realized I was nothing. Like, I was very behind upon everything, because I'm going to be very honest with you. I mean, I should have worked very hard in IAE, but I didn't work that hard. And it was all my fault. I'm not going to, sugarcoat it. It was a lot of my part. I should have worked hard. And it showed a lot when I was in that year, because I remember I got a chance to sit in the front row, and that's because, I was lucky. I was there before Mawlana Yusuf Ghoth, and I took his spot in the front row. So I'm sorry, Mawlana. He ended up going in the back. I felt so bad afterwards, but I think he enjoyed it in a way. I don't know. You have to talk to him about that. But to get him on, man, he has a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Got to convince him, man.
Dude, come on, Mawlana. Come on. But yeah, I was lucky enough to sit in the front row, because I remember one of the other advice right before I boarded the flight was do dakhla, try to get dakhla in the higher year, right? Like the normal year I was supposed to go in, and also try to sit in the front. Don't ever sit in the back. That's what Mufti Wasim told me. So when I saw that empty space, I was like, hey, can I just sit here? Because I mean, I know it's reserved for Mawlana Yusuf, but it looks like he's coming late. And it's going to look kind of bad if the teacher is looking at an empty spot. So I mean, the guys were like, yeah, you're right. You have a point, So I apologize. I apologize, Yusuf. But yeah, later on, I made it up. Okay, later on, I reserved Mishkat year, and I reserved his seat in Dora year. So I paid it back. Don't worry. So yeah, I was lucky enough to sit in the front, and man, when I sat in the front, that front row. So in order to like illustrate how the classroom is, it's like, you have about like, it ranges from 50 to like maybe 70 students in that classroom. And I'm thinking, like, is it like this size? I don't know. It's a little bit bigger than this size. But I remember there's so many guys there. And usually the individuals who would sit in the front are the smart, or the ones who have the most information, or they retrieve the most information. And I didn't really know about this. Like, when I started classes, I look at the side of me, and I see, man, mashallah, there's like this brother from Chad, mashallah. I don't know if he wants to be named, and I don't want to name him, but mashallah, dude, this guy, he finished memorizing Bulugh al-Maram. That's a hadith
Mashallah.
book, and then he memorized Riyadh al-Salihin. I think at the time he was memorizing Riyadh al-Salihin. He was about to finish. And then I remember Mishkat year, he was memorizing Mishkat al-Masabih. And then I think in Dora year, he started memorizing Bukhari. And I was like, man, dude, I'm sitting next to some like legit guys, right? And there's one guy from Indonesia. He's also doing the same thing. Bulugh al-Maram, he's memorizing Riyadh al-Salihin, he's memorizing all of these kitabs. And this is on top of like, they're in Sabah and Ashara, they're doing their Sabah and Ashara Qira'ah, right?
Mashallah.
And that in itself is like another like intensive program within the Alim course. So you have to do those kitabs, and then on top of that, you have to do Shatibiya and all that. And I mean, the only reason I know Shatibiya is because I hung around with those guys, like, I mean, I wouldn't know, like, Susi and, Ibn Kathir, those guys who probably going to listen, they're going to make fun of me. But that's the only reason I know these things, because I've been hanging out with those guys, and those guys would work hard. They would have their designated taqrar time for all of that stuff. And it's just like, man, you feel like you're nothing. You feel like that year I truly felt like I was a loser, to be honest with you. And I told myself, like, look, in order for me to compete with these guys, I really have to work hard. So the issue I was having was that I was doing a lot of catch up, and at the same time I'm doing the current curriculum. So I'm catching up, like I'm trying to go over some sarf and nahu, That's why when they say, don't fool around in first and second year, that's the reason why they say that, because they don't want you to play catch up. Like, it's terrible. Because I remember that whole year I was insane. I was literally crazy, because I was studying, I think, 10 to 12 hours in a day, every day. And our weekend was 1 day weekend. And what was it? I think Saturday after Maghrib all the way up to like Sunday Maghrib, I think that was our weekend. So I was studying all the way up to like Saturday. And I remember we would have like designated qaylula time. I remember we would have, what was it? Some breaks in between, like Asr time. Asr to Maghrib, we would have a break. So I would use those times to study. And it's dangerous, man. It's very dangerous, because you get really sleepy, because classes are from I think it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then it can end up like all the way up to Maghrib or something like that. No, actually all the way to Asr. My bad. So it can be kind of scary, because after Dhuhr and when you go to classes, you end up kind of feeling sleepy, because you have qaylula time for that, and it was dangerous. But what I would do, and I do not recommend this, but I used to do this, and it's really bad. But I heard that one of those ustad, that he would take chili, and he would dilute it in water, and he would wipe it on his eyes a little bit, like in proximity to his eyes, not directly to his eyes, but in proximity, so he can feel the burn, and it wouldn't make him sleepy, so he can study more. I was like, you know what? If he did that, I'm gonna go one above. I went to the grocery store, I bought fresh chilies, and I was like, I cut them up during my time, during the qaylula time, and I would squirt that concentrated chili juice into my eye. And I was like dying. I was like, okay. Like, that's how it was. I was like,
Could you even read what you were trying to get accomplished?
bro, to be honest, man, the first time I tried it, I couldn't read anything. Then I found out, like, okay, there's a sweet spot. Okay, so it's like a hit or miss. And then eventually my friend was like, stop doing that. You're killing yourself. I mean, that was a year when I think I got sick a lot, and then I got sick a lot, but I didn't miss classes. I still attended classes, but I was barely made, like I was a dead man walking, It was intense. And I remember like one incident, in order to highlight what I was going through. It was like, I wanted to read in front of Mawlana Choksi, right? This is someone I looked up to, and I still do look up to him, you know, and he was my role model, my hero. And I want to read and show him that I exist, right? I'm here. You know, Mawlana, you know, look at me, you know, I can read too. Right? I was a silly person, right? But I wanted to be recognized. So I was like, okay, you know, the best way to be recognized with Malchoksi is if I read Ibadah in his class. Worst mistake ever, but I'm glad I did it, right? I was reading Ibadah and Malchoksi, it's intimidating, right? You're reading Ibadah, first of all, in front of Malchoksi, and then you're reading Ibadah in front of the whole class, right? So it's intimidating. So I'm reading Ibadah and I'm like, okay, I'm reading. And then Malchoksi just stops me. He's like, okay, Tero. And I'm like, oh God. Yes, Malchoksi. And he's like, you know, I don't know exactly in Urdu, but he was saying like, Josh rehna acha hai, magar kaam bhi karna hai. And I was like,
Could you translate that?
what he said was that it's good to have passion, but it's also, you know, in order to back up that passion, you got to do some work as well, right? So I felt so bad. I was like, oh man, Malchoksi. So then, you know, eventually, you know, someone who was sitting next to me, they took over. And you feel bad when they take over, you know, when you were assigned to read Ibadah that day and someone takes over, you kind of feel humiliated. And that's how I felt. You know, I'm not going to lie. There was a lot of crying I did. There was a lot of anxiety and a lot of self-doubt. I remember I would always ask myself, like, you know, do I really belong in this place? Like, do I belong or do I deserve to be an Alim? I don't know. I don't think so, because there's so many people out there I see that are way better than me. I don't know what I could add on the table, what I can add differently than these guys. And they're more better at certain aspects of, like, they're really good overall as well. So I was self-doubting a lot during that time. And I don't know what it was that kept me going. I think part of it that helped a lot was, I think the major thing that helped a lot, as I'm thinking right now, is I remember I used to cry and pray a lot to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was just like, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I just want to make it. You know, even if I'm not the best student, at least I want to be amongst these individuals for at least these 3 years, you know? You know, at least let me benefit whatever I can benefit. Allahu Alam, you know, and let's see afterwards if I'm beneficial to society. And I prayed a lot during that time. And I also called every Saturday night. I would either call my mom. I mean, yeah, I would call her every Saturday. And then afterwards I would call one of my closest friends. And I think I would talk to Talal. I think you know Talal.
Yeah.
And then I would talk to Ibrahim, you know.
Shout out to Ibrahim Osman.
Ibrahim Osman, man. Old timer from IIE, bro. So I would talk to them and they would say a lot of supportive things. Like, you know, even though it was hard to find a friend who was going through what I was going through, it was just like very hard to find that. So the best thing I could have done was, like, I was talking to close friends in America. Took a lot. I mean, those minutes were expensive, but I think those minutes were worth it because they gave a lot of motivational speeches. They're like, you know what? You know, Ibrahim, I think at the time he was into jujitsu, so he would give his jujitsu philosophy. And, you know, Talal, he was going through a lot.
Yeah.
I don't want to mention, but he was going through a lot himself. And he himself was like, look, man, I'm going through all of these things. And, you know, I'm still pulling through. Like, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still giving me strength, right? And when I heard those words, I was like, you know what? If this guy's going through these things, you know what? Who am I? Like, this is like a picnic compared to what he's going through, right? So I shouldn't be like a crybaby, and I don't want to give up, and I don't want to be a coward now. I'm here. Let me do this. Let me finish it. And it was hard because I remember my Ibadah wasn't good. My Nahu wasn't good. My Sarf wasn't good. And I'm improving on all of these things. At the same time, I remember my tajweed and my recitation wasn't even good, right? And Zakariyya was known to be this like really high caliber school for Quran. Like, one thing for sure, their qira'ah is on a next level.
MashaAllah.
Like, without a doubt. Like, individuals who do sabah and ashara from there, they're amazing. Like,
MashaAllah.
generally speaking, they're amazing. Subhanallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase them.
Ameen.
But this guy who was really bad, I remember my first day, my first class was with Qari Saleh. And man, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward Qari Saleh.
Ameen.
But he was one of the toughest teachers. He was very tough on me. And he was very strict on me, and he was stern. And he had every right to be so, because I was terrible, And I remember the first time I recited, he was like, if you're going to recite like this, then you better be standing outside of my class, right?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, dude, I never heard these kind of words before. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm bad. And my own roommate, he was there. We were classmates. He told me that, look, honestly, Abdullah, you recite worse than a Hifz kid. And I'm going to give you some advice. Don't do Qari Saleh's class. Go downstairs and do Nadhara with the Hifz kid. With the Hifz kids, right? And I was asking him, like, would Qari Saleh actually let me do that? If you explain your situation, he would do it. He would let you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. My roommate, even though he's really harsh with me, but he actually helped me out a lot. He gave me some good advice. So I said that. I told Qari Saleh, look, I don't want to do this. I feel like every time you're going to test me in front of everybody, you're going to have the same result. So how about I go downstairs for this entire year and work on my nadara? And, I skip your class. And he was like, yeah, okay, yeah, go do that. So I remember that entire year I was improving on my recitation. I was reciting to one of the Qari Sahibs in downstairs in the Zakariyya's Hifz class.
Mm-hmm.
And that was whenever they had Qari Saleh's class, I would have to go downstairs, and that's what I would do. And it was a struggle because, it was a struggle because at the same time, you see all these Hifz kids look at you, and they know if you're not a Hifz kid and you're an course kid, and they're looking at you and they're looking at how bad you are in reciting. And I was treated really like one kid. I would when I would recite to the Qari Sahib, before I recite to the Qari Sahib, I would have to recite to one kid, and whenever I would recite to him, that one kid, he would show me some attitude. But at the end of the day, I didn't get fazed by it. I knew that long term, this is my goal. Mm-hmm. Like, my goal is to recite the Quran. And I mean, whatever, man. My ego is taking huge hits right now, and let it get those hits. I'm going to take it. And eventually I made it through that. I mean, finally, I think for my final exam for Quran, I had to recite to Qari Saleh, which is like, oh my God, dude. I mean, for those who don't know, Qari Saleh Peck, he's like one of the key students and favorite students of Qari Ayub Ishaq. And Qari Ayub Ishaq is the main qira'ah teacher of Zakariyya.
Yeah,
so, and they say that Qari Ayub is actually much more lenient than Qari Saleh. So Qari Saleh is just, he's strict. So I personally knew some of my friends, classmates, they would rather recite to Qari Saleh because I think when they would recite to Qari Saleh would nitpick on their mistakes, and they would improve on that. And Qari Ayub, he would be a little bit lenient in some matters. I don't know completely. Maybe you have a better chance talking to one of the guys who graduated from Sabah and Ashara. I think Qari Noman will be the best. But yeah, Qari Saleh is very, very, he's a stickler with certain things, right? So it was tough. Like, it was tough reciting in front of him. And if you sit in front of him and then, he's looking down and then he looks at you like this, oh man, you done screwed. Like, you messed up. Like, you messed up. Like, and then if he furrow his eyebrows, there's certain body languages you can see that, oh man, oh God.
Something's
Please, coming. Allah, help me. But I needed that. I needed Qari Saleh to be very strict with me. And till this day, I actually text him from time to time when I recite during Ramadan, when I recite the entire Quran, Every time I recite, I remember Qari Saleh, and I would text him. I would text him and say, Qari Saleh, even though you were very strict with me and you were kind of like harsh with me, I thank you at the bottom of my heart that because of you, I actually can recite properly. I wasn't reciting properly and it was humiliating, but I really thank you a lot for that. And I said that all in the text. And he was just like, I remember exactly what he would say. He would say, Mawlana Abdullah, forgive me for being very harsh with you. Forgive me for whatever I said to you. And please make dua, keep me and my family in your prayers. And I was just like, man, like, why do you have to say Maulana, bro? Like, Qari Saleh would make you feel bad like that. And mashallah, he's so intellectual. He's very intellectual. Like, I want to just share a story about him. Like, I think he was 1 year ahead of Maulana Mullah. And the interesting about Qari Saleh is that he was the top student of his class when he was a year ahead of Maulana Mullah, and he was one of the hardest working students. And he's not even like, I don't think, I'm not too sure, but he's I don't think he's Gujarati or anything. I don't think that was his background. He had a different background. He was mixed or something. So it was he had an interesting story, because he himself didn't have when he first started or something like that, when he first started going to madrasa, he didn't have the ability to even recite salawat upon Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam properly. And now he's like a qari, and he's a teacher, and I think now he's an imam or something like that, mashallah. So he did a lot for me. Like, he was one individual, he did a lot. And that was my 5th year. It was a very challenging year. And at the end, when I finished that 5th year and I finally graduated from it, I was relieved and I was so happy, because every day felt like a century. It was just so hard. Then, Mishkat and Dora, it was a breeze. I think that 5th year, it helped me get through Mishkat and Dora. Like, it was a breeze. Like, I mean, I wasn't a top student, but I wasn't struggling, as a student. I wasn't stumbling. And I remember in Mishkat, I had finally I got to sat in the designated class with Qari Saleh. And I remember when I was reciting, when he doesn't say anything or he doesn't really correct you, you probably made a few mistakes, but it means generally overall you did pretty good. And he's like, okay, but if he says something and if he says some harsh words, like, you kind of messed up, he'll kick you out. But I remember that whole class, I made it through, and I felt like, man, that's an accomplishment. Even though if I probably got a C in that class, that's an accomplishment itself, just making it through. So alhamdulillah, finally, like, Mishkat was a lovely year. It was a year, I think I took a little bit of a backseat because I worked too hard, and I felt like if I start working like this crazy, I might burn out soon. So I took a little bit of a break, and I started hanging out with the guys who sat in the back, and it was just fun, those guys, they would call themselves, or I don't know who calls them that. I think maybe one teacher or someone, they called them the Arba'un. I remember those guys, if you want to have a good time, just chill with those guys, man. Those guys who are sitting in the back, they know how to have good times, man. I remember we would do, usually we would do like braais during like Saturday nights. That was our weekends. But sometimes those guys would do braais like every day, like every night. The brothers, and it's hilarious. And like, they would get caught by the Nigran, and then you would see them running with like the lamb chops, and like it's a sight to behold. But it's funny, man. Those guys were great. But eventually, I remember another thing that was interesting about Mishkat year is that was a year I got an opportunity to make khidmah for Mufti Rida al-Haq Sahib. And that was through one close friend of mine. His name is Mawlana Akhtar, and he was from Port Elizabeth, which is like south of South Africa, like all the way south. I think it's like a couple hours away from Cape Town. Mm-hmm. So he got a chance to be a student Khadim al-Khas of Mufti Saab. And in order to be a Khadim al-Khas for Mufti Saab is that you have these two individuals, you have these two old-timers, right? And they're actually Mufti Saab's real Khadims, like real Khadim al-Khas. And they have an interview process, right? So those two individuals were Mawlana Durwesh and Mawlana Burhan, and those individuals would interview you. They would put you on a trial, like they would tell you, okay, come every Sunday, and we'll check you how you are giving khidmah, how you are as are you proficient, are you effective? Like they want to see all of that, right? Then they want to also, I think once you get in, once you are a Khadim al Khas for Mufti Saab as a student, then they eventually will teach you how to make chai for Mufti Saab. Like Mufti Saab has a particular chai that he likes, and it needs to be made in a certain way. And so they will teach you all of that. So eventually he got through, he became that Khadim al Khas. And then I remember like every Sunday, those who went to Zakariyya, they know that every Sunday Mufti Saab has a majlis. The interesting thing about that is that right after Sunday, like right after Fajr Salah of Sunday, Mufti Saab Mufti Saab would invite guests to his room, to his house, and he would serve breakfast to these individuals, right? So there are a lot. It depends, like the amount of guests that are going to Mufti Saab's house. It can vary from 20 to 40. It can even range all the way to like 50. It can be crazy. That room, that apartment would be jam packed. And so these Khadim al Khas, like I think there will be max 2 student Khadim al Khas, and then they would need extra volunteers. And so my friend was like, hey man, do you want to just come through and just help me out? And I'm like, man, dude, I really want to go to sleep. I mean, dude, how long is this going to be? And he's like, don't worry, it's going to be like an hour or two. It's never an hour or two. It's all the way up to like Mufti Saab. It's actually all the way up to Mufti Saab does his majlis, and then afterwards there's an after party as well, after majlis party. They all come to Mufti Saab and have chai, and it goes all the way to like Dhuhr Salah. So it's mujahada, bro. It's mujahada straight up. But I was like, you know what? I'm not here for too long, and this is a good opportunity for me to, maybe be in close proximity of Mufti Saab. I don't expect myself to be engaged with him, but maybe I'm close to him and I can observe him, right? That's worth something, right? So I started doing that. I started to come after Fajr, and I would walk in, I would go to Mufti Saab's room, and we all had our designated positions. We all had our designated roles, right? It was very efficient actually, because one individual, he would take care of like the dishes, right? And Mufti Saab, he doesn't do paper plates or paper cups. He doesn't do all of that, even though it'll be efficient or it'll be nice for us. But he loves ceramic plates. He loves the ceramic chai cups. Individuals need to be served in that cup. Chai is supposed to be in that cup. No water, no Coke, nothing. He's very particular about that, or else you would notice his annoyance. If he sees you're doing something like a little bit like that, he'll be like, okay, he's not doing it right. So yeah, everything had to be with ceramic. And so there was one guy who would always wash the plates, wash the cups. Then there would be one guy who would be stacking the cups and the plates, one guy delivering those cups and the plates. And then there'll be one guy on toasting bread. I would be the guy who would be toasting bread and burning myself, but it was, for the sake of Allah, right? You're doing these things, but I was toasting that bread. And I remember my friend, he was on chai duty because only certain individuals, like those 2 guys, Khadim al Khas students, would make the chai. And so he would do that. And one guy, he would be sweeping, one guy would be on sweeping duty, right? So it was interesting in the sense that it was a lot of hard work, a lot of labor. However, I noticed that, one may think that, okay, well, you're not talking to Mufti Saab, you're not really sitting in that gathering. like, how are you benefiting from Mufti Saab? And one way I realized that I was benefiting from was that I would observe all of these Mufti Saab's friends and Mufti Saab's satis and how they would interact with Mufti Saab. And it's a different interaction than an interaction what typical students would have with Mufti Saab. Because typically what happens is like after Asr till Maghrib, Mufti Saab has some free time and you can go visit Mufti Saab. And I noticed like in the early days that whenever you go visit Mufti Saab and you sit with him and you sit with him and you don't have a lot of questions, it can turn out to be like a silent majlis, right? Mufti Saab can stay quiet. And I realized that you have to engage with Mufti Saab. You are in the pilot seat and you have to like, like ride this plane. So if you don't, then, Mufti Saab won't even really respond. And then afterwards, he'll just say, okay, chalo. Then that means like, okay, let's go, right? We're done. So that happened a lot with me. So when I was doing that Sunday khidmah, I would notice like, okay, Mufti Saab has these wild friends. He would have this one guy from like, I don't know, Peshawar. He's a Qari Saab, and he will be wilding out. Like he would sometimes take pictures of Mufti Saab and he would show it to me, and I'm like, I don't know if that's Mufti Saab's fatwa, but he would be like, look at Mufti Saab, look at his beard, mashallah, it's nice, right? And I'm like, yeah, man. And it was nice. I mean, he would be talking to Mufti Saab, and I realized that Mufti Saab, he loves current events. Like he likes talking about, oh, what's happening in America, what's happening in South America, oh, oil prices. I didn't know that Mufti Saab was interested in like economics. I didn't know he was interested in politics. So he would like to listen about all these things, and these are things that his close like khadims and friends would talk about. And I was just like, wow, I'm just observing all of this while I'm just serving them bread. I'm serving them like I'm setting the plates, and I would just see him, and it's amazing. So I learned a lot. So afterwards, I realized, okay, you know what? My strategy when I go to Mufti Saab is that right after Asr, when he has free time, when I go to Mufti Saab, if I don't have a lot of questions, I'm gonna go. I had an iPhone that time, so we're not supposed to have an iPhone that time or a smartphone at that time, and I would just have an app like CNN or BBC. I mean, nowadays I don't recommend that, but like at the time, just to have an interaction with Mufti Saab, I just wanted to know what the current events were, so I don't. You don't have that huge gap of silence, uncomfortable silence, right? And I didn't want to end up talking about, oh, Mufti Saab, what is your salary? That would be like, I don't know myself, and I might end up asking something like that. So I get very uncomfortable. So, you it was interesting. We spoke, like I would speak about all of these things, and I would speak about stuff like, Mufti Saab, there's a huge LGBTQ movement going on. What do I do? Like, Mufti Saab, how do I handle this? And I would always ask advice like that, and he would give me genuine answers. He was like, okay, well, you should talk to them. You should propagate what Islam teaches about, what Islam tells us about, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam tells us about. So you should propagate these things to them, and you shouldn't just phase them out. You shouldn't just turn them away. If you have that opportunity, take that time to give some dawah, right? And these are things that I was surprised, because sometimes, generally speaking, you have this idea and that notion that South African scholars generally are very strict. They have a very strict mindset. So it opened my eyes. Like, I mean, I guess this is like opening my thought and my perspective on South African scholars. I guess not everyone is like that.
No, so mashallah, that's amazing that you were able to do that for Mufti Saab. Can you tell us a little bit about how your final year of studies were? What were like the emotions you're going through, knowing that you're going to leave this madrasa that you've been a student of for a few years now?
Final years of madrasa, you never actually think about it, or you never actually realize that it's a reality until like it's actually happening. Like you actually booked a flight to America, and this is the last flight you're ever going to take, and possibly you may not come back, right? there's always that possibility. And I didn't really realize this until I think it was like the end of Dora year, like up to graduation. I think that was the year when I realized that, oh shoot, I'm not gonna come back. Like this is gonna be my last time. And I always had it in the back of my head that I was not gonna be here again, or I might not enjoy these asatiza that I used to enjoy as a student. Now I'm gonna be like, to them I'll be a colleague. I still think I'm a student, but to them they'll treat me like a colleague now. And it was surreal, and that was the reason why I had this mentality in Dora year, especially that look, I'm not gonna be here anymore, or I possibly might not come back here anymore. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to utilize and ask them and try to capitalize on their time as much as I can. And that's how I was like asking questions to Mawlana Choksi. I was asking questions to Mufti Rida al-Haq. I was trying my best. I think every week I would try to visit Mufti Rida al-Haq during the year. I try to make it a point. But I know like almost every Sunday I would eventually be there anyways at his house. It's just that you won't get that interaction though that you're looking for. And with Mawlana Choksi, it was a bit different because, the way I guess you can build a relationship outside of class with Mawlana Choksi that I found was after Asr, Mawlana Choksi would usually have like a walk. He would walk to his home, and sometimes you can make it and catch him, and you can talk to him while we're walking to his house. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes someone else gets there before you. So it's always like a hit or miss. And it was hard for me to talk to Mawlana Choksi outside of class. Outside of class, it was hard. But inside of class, I remember it was, for some reason, it's so easy for me to talk to Mawlana Choksi. Even when I asked some questions that Mawlana Choksi, like, he would not like, and he would actually yell at me for, the next day I would still ask him, like, Mawlana Choksi, how about this question I have? As if like that day I forgot about it, because I knew in the back of my head, like, look, I'm not going to see him again. This is probably the only time, and this is it. So, Mawlana Choksi, he was a very interesting individual. Like, whatever, like, I heard from Mufti Wasim, I think in person, it's even more. It's greater, right? Subhanallah. Like, you just feel like you want to be a better person when you're around Mawlana Choksi. That's how I felt, And he would have this khanqa type of classroom, the spiritual type of classroom. He would say beautiful things. I remember in Nur Anwar, he said something very intriguing. And, Mawlana Choksi is the type of guy who would read a lot of malfudat, and he would read a lot of the traditions and the wordings and the sayings of like the pious predecessors, right? And he would sometimes share some in class. So I remember one of those things was like, he would mention that one of the most deceptive names that are usually given to Muslims in this day and age is Khalid, Malik. Those are one of the most dishonest, deceptive names that usually are given. And that is because Khalid, has a sense of eternal. It means kind of eternal. You're always going to be there. Malik, you're an owner. And the true eternal being, the true Malik, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he would say one of the most honest names that are given to Muslims in this day and age is Harith, right? Harith means a farmer. So in the day of judgment, we will be asked about our crops, we will be asked about our fields, we will be asked about the plantation. So it was interesting. I was like, I never really thought of it that way, but he would just bring some like random intriguing food for thoughts, from here and there. One of the most interesting thing he said, and I remember this exactly, and this was Nur Anwar. He said that sometimes you get to see from just the way the person talks and the person acts, you get to see if that person has qana'a or if that person has hirs. and when that person has qana'a, there's some sign of nur, and if there's some hirs, there's a sign of dhulm and negativity.
Can you translate those words?
So qana'a means contentment, and hirs means like greed or the desire to want more, right? And nur, obviously that means light, and dhulm means darkness and oppression, right? So in the sense, like, qana'a indicates positivity, and then hirs indicates negativity. And then he relayed a story about himself, right? This is a time when Mawlana Sulaiman Chokshi, his family was still in Gujarat, and he was still in that phase where he was starting off in Zakariyya. So he had a small room. He didn't have a house. So right now he has a house, and he has his entire family with him. But in this story, he relates about a sheikh that came from Tanzania. And this sheikh, he came to visit Mawlana Chokshi. He wanted to see Mawlana Chokshi. And when I forgot what was the prior engagement or what the conversation was, but Mawlana Chokshi was like, I guess he was saying somewhere along the lines where, forgive me, this room is a bit small, it's a bit tight. And the sheikh, he says in Arabic, لا بأس يا شيخ, هذا البيت أكبر من بيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And the translation is like, don't worry about it. This house is actually, or this room is actually bigger than the room of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Mawlana Chokshi was enamored by that statement. He was like, subhanallah, just by that kalam, just by that sentence, like I realized that this individual is a very genuine person. So that's the type of individual, like Mawlana Chokshi is that observant. He studies you. He looks at how you talk. He looks at how you walk and do your actions, right? He's actually a person who would learn through observation. Like by just looking at you, he kind of like assesses what kind of individual you may be. And I remember like during Dora year, I really wanted to, one time, like just clean Mawlana Chokshi's house or, just help him out, because that was the time I remember it was a sad time for Mawlana Chokshi, because that was the year Mawlana Chokshi's wife passed away. And it was a sad time for him, and he was by himself, and he was living by himself. And I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I just want to help him out. I just want to accompany him, And Mawlana Chokshi, I've been trying to ask him, but Mawlana Chokshi always rejects me. He smiles and he says, no, it's okay. That's how it is. And then I remember like the third time or the fourth time he asks, I asked, was that he responded by saying that, look, if you really have this desire to do khidmah, then why don't you help Mufti Saab during Sundays? Because, he has so many guests in his room, in his house. He really needs help. Why don't you go help him out? I mean, I didn't tell him that I already do help him out, but like I was just like, subhanAllah, he's thinking about other places, other people too. So, he's a very ajib and interesting individual. Like, I mean, I think just describing him doesn't do justice. You just got to see him. You got to meet him, bro. It's different. But subhanAllah, I have benefited a lot with Mawlana Chokshi. And then there's Mawlana Uthman. And Mawlana Uthman, he's somebody I know for sure you can chill with. I mean, he taught us Abu Dawud Sharif. And he's a guy who's actually, he's a actual like a villager type. He doesn't have a filter. So he would say whatever is on his mind. And I had a great relationship with him. I actually said some personal things to him, and I didn't say to anyone else. Maybe to Mawlana Chokshi I said some personal things, but I said a lot of things that like mentally I was going through, and it was a jeep, because people have this perception about him, but he's not exactly like that. Like I remember I would always try to go with my friends, and we would go to his house, and we would try to like, he likes students to give him a massage, right after Maghrib. And that was the opportunity. We can ask him anything. We can ask him like any type of questions. Sometimes we go for the shot where, like, if he has an imtihan, like, if he's conducting our exam, we kind of ask him like, yo, so
what's on the exam?
well, yeah, like when he's getting too comfortable, like, Mawlana Uthman, like, what is on that exam? The first question. What's the first question? And he just like, he opens his eye. He's like, you're trying to get that out of me, huh? Like, I know. Don't worry. You guys will pass. You will pass. You will pass. This idiot will pass. Don't worry. You look at the guy who's massaging my back. Don't worry. You guys will pass. Don't worry. Funny thing is, he would give me the lowest grades. Like, he would give me the lowest grades in the imtihan, but I mean, he did pass me. So, but yeah, I mean, I would do his khidmah, and I would go to his house, and we would have a good time. Like, we can be baked takalluf. We can talk about anything, right? And it's amazing. Like, these individuals, they had a huge impact on my life. I remember Mothman is like, whenever you come to India, just come through to my place. I'll treat you well. And yeah. Who else was there? There was Mawlana Abbas. He graduated from Nadwatul Ulama. He's a very kind individual, like very kind individual, because I think it takes a lot to get him angry. Like, it takes a lot. If you did something really, really bad, he'll get angry at you. And another teacher that is unbelievable is I can say for sure, like, right in terms of like academics, in terms of research, in terms of like mutala and all that stuff, after Mufti Rida al-Haq, I would say it would be Mufti Muhammad Ali, right? Mufti Muhammad Ali, he graduated from Dabal, and then also he graduated from Darul Uloom Deoband. He did Dora again because he wanted to do takhasus. I'm not sure if he did takhasus in two fields. He did takhasus in Quran and tafsir, and then he did takhasus, I think, in fiqh, I think in ifta, in Deoband. I may be wrong, but I think that's what he did. So, and in fact, actually, when he was doing takhasus fil tafsir, I think Mawlana Naeem Salim at the time was teaching over there in Deoband. So he did it with him. So I even asked him about that, and he was like, yeah, I did that. I studied under him. So it was interesting to know about that. So he's another gem. I think one of the best classes that I ever had in Dora, one of the best ones, was Tirmidhi Awal. I think he has an unbelievable organization with that class. With that class, the way he organizes his dars, the way he would teach, and a lot of it, people would say that he bases it off of Dars al-Tirmidhi. But I also say that Dars al-Tirmidhi is a book by Mufti Taqi Uthmani. And a lot of people use that book because he kind of quotes that word for word. But he also like adds a little bit of his own thing to it, to his own mutala. And the reason why he doesn't want to go over, like, he doesn't want students to get overwhelmed with information is because he's like, if I overwhelm them with so much information, they will just forget about it. And it's easier just sticking to like this Tirmidhi and like this organized method so that they can grasp all the materials, all the information with ease. So his class was nice. Mufti Saab's Dora class, if you really want to see Mufti Saab's true potential, like true Mufti Saab's knowledge, you go to that Bukhari Awal class, you will be mind blown. Like, this individual, he may not be a hafidh, but he knew, like, he was a hifdh of a lot of stuff. Like, he was a hafidh of a lot of stuff. It's unbelievable. I remember like one individual, he would always meet Mufti Saab. He'd always stay with Mufti Saab in his room. And he went up to me and he was like, he had that villager, Peshawar mentality, no filter. And he would come up to me and he's like, Abdullah. And I was cleaning dishes at the time in Mufti Saab's house. And he's like, Abdullah, are you a Hafid? And I was like, no, I'm not a Hafid. Oh man, nowadays people can't be like Mufti Saab. You can't go on not being a Hafid and expecting to be like Mufti Saab. Forget about it. And I was like, thank you. I mean, I wasn't aiming for that. I wasn't really aiming for that. Oh man. And he's like, what's your end goal? What is your end goal? What do you want to be? تخصص إفتاء تخصص في الحديث. And I was like, no, I'm thinking about nursing school. And he's like, oh, mumarrid. And I was like, yes, yes, that's the Arabic for nursing, for nurse. Oh man, he's a lovely person. But Mufti Saab is unbelievable. His class, dude, I mean, I may not have gotten a lot of stuff. Like I wrote whatever I could wrote, but as Mawlana Yusuf Ghoth, man, I think filled up like 3, 4. I think like, I don't know. I may be wrong. When you get Yusuf on this podcast, ask him this question. Like, I think personally, I saw like 5 notebooks he filled up with Mufti Saab's notes. Like in that class, he filled it up, and I filled up only 1 notebook. And I was just impressed. Like I filled up 1 notebook, but subhanallah, man, it was he's unbelievable, man. I mean, I think individuals who are very academic oriented, research oriented, especially in terms of Islamic sciences, I think they would love Mufti Saab. They would love to just sit there and learn and grasp everything they can from Mufti Saab, because Mufti Saab, he has an amalgamation of so much mutala that you don't know where exactly he's getting all these references from. Because, if you're teaching Bukhari, he may be getting some from Fathul Bari, he's getting some from Faydul Bari, he's getting some from maybe Kashful Bari. I don't know. He has a lot of things that he researches. And then sometimes when he's teaching Bukhari, he's getting stuff from Mabsut, he's getting from Asad. These are fiqh kitabs. So, Fathul Bari, Faydul Bari, these are shuruhat for Bukhari, right? So these are typical books that we would, go to and see like, okay, if I didn't really get this hadith, I want to know the explanation of the hadith. We would typically go to those books to find out what more about this hadith. But like, Mufti Saab is pulling stuff from like Mabsut, he's pulling stuff from Majalla, he's pulling stuff from like a lot of fiqh books, a lot of ifta books. And you're just like enamored, it's like, dude, I'm trying to keep up, I'm trying to write, and it's just way too much stuff, and subhanallah, Dora with him was unbelievable. It just showed me that I hope I pass this class. That's what I prayed for. I was like, I hope we don't expect to learn all of this and put that on a test paper. But that was Dora year.
How was graduation then?
Graduation, it was. We had like, okay, so when in our last class in class, and up to the moment we had the graduation, we had like 1 week or something. So we were just chilling. My friends and I, we were just going places. That was a time when I think a lot of Jamaat people were coming from different parts of like the greater Johannesburg. So I may be rusty on the names of the cities, but like you got guys, Jamaat from Mayfair, Jamaat from let's say Soweto, and Jamaat from Lenasia. They're coming, and the main thing during that time was like, are you going for Saad? Are you going for Saad? One of the individuals who kind of take care of I think he's kind of like an official guy who takes care of Jamaats in the madrasa, is Mawlana Junaid. He's a main guy there. So he would always like, towards the end, it got to be like a weekly tashkil session for us. Like, okay, who's going for Saad? Who's going for Saad? Who's going for Saad? Like 1 year Jamaat. And I was just like, man, I'm gonna stay quiet. I'm gonna try to, nothing against their Jamaat. I love Jamaat. I had a lot of good time in Jamaat. It's just like I had other goals in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to pursue something else. But I would try to avoid it. I would try to walk the other when I see them. but but a lot of people I know, a lot of my close friends, they did go for Jamaat and they said they had a great time there. They learned a lot from that experience. And so that was like up to the point where graduation started. And then graduation, it was massive. It was huge. Like, I didn't realize that, in South Africa, there were this many people who really honored Bukhari Khatam, the Khatm al-Bukhari. And, I think it was the similar case with Darul Salam, right? With their Khatm al-Bukhari, it was a lot of people too, right? But at that time,
Yeah, inshallah.
mashallah, subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase them. But yeah, at that time, that was the first time I actually saw this because there was no precedence for me before that. I mean, I didn't see any Khatm al-Bukhari like that in America, I mean, I saw the Khatm al-Bukhari in IAE, but it was only like only 5 guys are graduating or maybe 6 guys, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, it was like, I guess the masjid was packed, but it wasn't like packed to an extent where we're all getting squished to like the walls and stuff. It was massive. It was huge. And I remember my mom was asking me like, Abdullah, do you want me to come? Do you want me to come for the Khatm al-Bukhari in South Africa? And I'm like, my mom, she was working and she, I realized that it's going to be like, she would have to ask a few days off. And it would kind of be, in my mind, I was thinking it may trouble her and I don't want to trouble her. And, I remember some of my family members, my uncle wanted to come, but I think due to scheduling reasons, he couldn't come. So, I mean, I told my mom, no, you don't have to come. Like, it's okay. We will just celebrate when I come back home. We'll have a small party and we'll just celebrate there. I think at that time, I realized, I missed my mom. I really missed her and I really missed getting my son, like my sanad, my certification. And I was looking around and I remember like all my friends, they had their families with them and they traveled far, far places to come and see their sons getting graduated. And I felt like, man, dude, I really wish my mom was here. And my mom is probably going to kill me when she hears this. Like, she's going to be like, you didn't tell him. Now you tell me. But, I was trying to be a man and I was trying not to, feel it. But I remember I was like, I couldn't take it anymore. I can't see all these families hugging their sons. And, you see these fathers, they're so proud of their sons. And, I mean, at the time, my father, he initially, he kind of left us when I was 2 years old, very early in my life. And I remember in Mishkat year, I didn't have too much of a communication with him from 2 years till like 20 something years. I think I met him for the first time when I was in Mishkat, and I think I was approximately maybe 22, 23, somewhere around there. And it was a big moment. It was kind of disappointing, but I remember the next year in Dora year, towards the end, I found out that he died, right? He passed away. And that hit me as well. Like, I felt, I never really had a father, to, like you see all these guys, you see their fathers, they're hugging them, they're holding, they have this so much, like they're so happy and they're so proud. But I when I saw that, I was like, man, I feel it. I feel something is lacking inside of me. And I took my certificate and I just went straight to my room and I just like went to bed. I was like, I don't want to meet anybody right now. And it was hard. But I mean, alhamdulillah, I had some good friends. I wasn't the only one. I had some good guys there. I think afterwards there's this guy from Detroit. His name is Mawlana Wahid, and he was in the same class, and we joked around and we fooled around. Just like how our relationship, we fool around, we mess around with each other. That's how he was, and that made me forget what I was feeling, and it was helpful. And that was my graduation. It was I was happy, but I was actually really sad, and afterwards, the sad part was actually saying goodbye to all my asatidha, and saying goodbye to Maulana Choksi, saying goodbye to Maulana Mufti Rida al-Haq Sahab, Maulana Uthman, Maulana Abbas, Mufti Muhammad Ali, Maulana Abdul Quddus, even though Maulana Abdul Quddus didn't like my Arabic, but I mean, I tried. He loved me in his own way. He loved me. And who else was there? I mean, I apologize if I'm forgetting people, I can't remember anyone else. Who else was there? I tried to visit everyone, even the teachers that didn't even teach me directly, like Maulana Abdullah Bamji, like Qari Mubin, like those individuals. I would meet them and I would send my last salam to them. Even I think Qari Zaid, I would ask him a lot of questions, even though he wasn't my personal teacher, but I would ask him questions because I heard he's amazing in fiqh, and I can speak to him in English. It was easy for me to speak to him in English. So it was that was my graduation. That was my whole career in Alim course. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of ups and downs. It was bittersweet. But I think at the end of the day, I still, till this day, I look at my certificate and I'm like, why did they give this to me? Like, I don't know why they gave this to me. Like, like, oh man, it feels so unreal. I don't feel like an Adam. I don't feel that I deserve it. And the only reason, I guess, that I can think of that I made it through was a lot of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and grace. And possibly, and I think, yeah, most probably it was my mom. She was the one who made a lot of dua. And I think my close friends also made a lot of dua too. Like, even though we were separated, like Nabil, Yusuf, Uthman, Zishan. I mean, I was in South Africa and Zishan got married to my sister, so I didn't even attend that wedding. I was busy in South Africa. I missed a lot in South Africa. Like, Maria was born. There was a lot of sacrifices, a lot of ups and downs, but alhamdulillah, like it was all worth it. I came back, and it was a big homecoming. And my mom was like so happy and she was so ecstatic, and she was like, you know what, I decided that me and Zishan's mother would throw a party for both of you guys. And I think you were there probably, right? I
don't know if you invited me.
Oh man,
just
awkward.
To be very honest. I definitely was not invited. Not that I could recall.
This just took the podcast to a very awkward turn.
I don't know if this is gonna get released. The one time Abdullah did come through for me, he brought me some masalas from South Africa.
Oh yes, I did. I brought some for you.
He brought some salt and pepper, and I forgot what. There's some red one, a white one.
There were some sauces, right? Those were the sauces.
There were sauces, yeah.
Those were the brai. That's the place to go for the brai. Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude, brai is something else, man.
Yeah, let's go back to you not inviting me. Continue. So you guys throw this big party.
We threw this party. Yeah, we threw this party, and I didn't even expect it. I even told her, you know what, you don't have to. Like, please don't make a scene out of, like, I don't want people to. It's just so weird. Like, everyone is there and they're just, celebrating you, and it's just like, I'm not used to that. I was like, I'd rather people not know about it. Like, I mean, I just really don't want to be on that pedestal. That's how I genuinely feel, and I still do feel like that's why it took you so long to get me on this podcast. I didn't want to be here, but he threatened me. Like, no. He was really kind, and I felt bad. He insisted, so that's why I came through. So, but it was Ajib, and I remember that speech that they wanted me to make. I think that was the worst speech I ever did because I don't like, I don't like giving speeches, emotional ones, in front of people, especially in front of my mom. And as for some reason, I don't like to be vulnerable in front of my mom and my family. Because I mean, even though they love me and they care for me, and they would definitely help me, for some reason I have this issue. Like, I have to keep it inside of me. Like, I have to keep it inside of me.
So you kind of like to bottle things up.
Yeah, I like to bottle things up, and I know that's not healthy, but that was the way I was. I was like that. I mean, now I kind of expressed it. It took a while to make me express myself, especially when you get married. You have to open up because your wife wants you to open up, and I didn't realize it, but I realized it when I got married. So it took a while. So I mean, that was my graduation.
Mashallah.
That's how it was for me.
Yeah, so while you were studying, there was an individual that was asking you what your purpose is. What's your goal? What's the end goal? And you responded and you said to become a nurse.
Yeah, I said that.
So where did that passion of pursuing nursing come from?
Yeah, currently I hold an LPN license, a licensed practical nurse. So it's like a step below RN, registered nurse. But it's like, you can only find jobs in nursing homes, and some hospitals accept LPNs, but not a lot. How I got to that decision was like, actually when I was in Darul Uloom Zakariyya, I remembered like in 5th year, like I said, I was struggling, I was working hard, and I was feeling I felt like a loser. And I was comparing myself to these individuals who were very talented and they were gifted. And later on I realized that, look, maybe I have a skill, I have a talent, and I haven't found that yet. I haven't found it yet. I haven't discovered it yet. And I'm probably too harsh to myself. I'm too aggressive to myself. And I'm comparing to these individuals, even though they may be good at certain subjects, but maybe they're not good at certain skills or certain subjects. Like Malchoksi would always say, like, don't always think that everyone is 100% in every category. Maybe that person has a 70% in good looks, but a 30% in intelligence, right? Or maybe the opposite. Maybe he has 70-80% in intelligence, but maybe 30% in good looks. So he said that one time, and I was like, wow. He said that in 5th year, and I started to be easy on myself. I was like, okay, my job is now to focus on trying to find what kind of skill I'm really good at. And at the time, the end goals for everybody else, when you're in that environment, everyone wants to either go to Mufti Bana's place for takhasus in hadith, or other individuals wanted to go to Mufti Ibrahim Desai's place for ifta. That was like the typical mindset usually for North Americans. I don't know about other students, but North Americans, that was their mindset.
Yeah.
Or some North Americans would say, like, okay, I want to stay and study ifta by Mufti Rida al-Haq. And that was the mindset. And I was like, all those things sound so great. And, once upon a time when I was in 2nd year or 3rd year, I actually wanted to do that. I wanted to go to Mufti Ibrahim Desai's place. But I realized that that's probably, I'm not suitable for that. Maybe I'm not capable of that kind of, that kind of structure or that kind of study. And maybe I could end up becoming a mufti or a student of ifta. But in terms of an individual contributing his 100% or, doing the best for that domain or that sector, I don't know if I can do that. I don't think so. That's what I thought, right? And I still think so. And when I realized that, I really enjoy doing khidmah for all of these asatidha. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy taking care of them. Mufti Saab, I enjoy giving him food. I enjoy setting his plate. I enjoy cleaning for him. And these were things that I just enjoyed. I liked doing it. It wasn't like, it was hard, but it wasn't like I don't see myself doing this. I thought like, okay, I wish I can do this as a career. And I was like, hold up, maybe there is a career like that. And so I started looking into, certain areas. I was thinking about, medicine. I was thinking about being a doctor. The thing that kind of pushed me away from medicine was the fact that, I know a lot of friends of mine who get into debt, who fall into the loans and all of that stuff, and they're struggling to pay it off. And I was like, man, I'm not coming from money. I'm not coming from that kind of household. And I don't want to burden my mom with that kind of like financial burden, because I know her, even though I would tell her like, don't worry about my loans, I will pay it off, she would end up helping me paying that off. And I don't want to do that. I was thinking about that. So I was like, okay, let's look at, how about nursing? I mean, I never thought about nursing. And, I had my smartphone and I was reading up on nursing. And it seemed like, okay, this less schooling and you get decently paid as a nurse. Like, I think when I was looking at it, the average was around, depending on what type of nurse you are, you can end up with like low as $60,000 all the way to like 100-something thousand.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, those are livable wages. Like, those are livable salaries. And I think I can do that. And, I was like, okay, well, I should also ask mashra from my teachers, see what that's the responsible thing to do, like see what they say about it. So I went to like all of my elder asatiza. I went to Mawlana Choksi. He said, are you doing anything haram as a nurse? And I was like, I don't think so, no.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, go do it. Why are you asking me? Right? And I was like, okay. I was like, okay. But he said it in his a lovable way. But I was like, okay, that's a yes from him. And then I went to Mufti Rida al-Haq Sahab. He was happy about it. He was like, yes. I went to all my asatiza, Mawlana Uthman, Mawlana Abbas. I don't know if I asked Mufti Muhammad Ali. I think I asked him as well. I asked all of my Dora, like, in my Dora year, all those individuals who taught me, I asked them. And they all said, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Actually, it's a really honorable job. And you're taking care of these individuals. You're taking care of sick individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an honorable job. And then I remember when I asked Qari Ayub, he's like, why did you want to do nursing? And I was like, Qari Sahab, I like doing khidmah, and that's what I think is best for me, doing nursing. And so he was like, okay, if you like doing khidmah and you see yourself doing it for the long haul, go for it. Do it. Those were the teachers. Majority of them said yes. There was no ishkal. And then
there's one notable that said no.
He was like a yes or no. Then afterwards, I think Garsalik, he realized that this is what I really wanted, and so he would kind of tease me. Oh, okay, ask the nurse Saab, Maulana nurse, right there. Ask them, okay, how do I take? I didn't even start nursing school, and he's asking me like, how do I take care of this disease? Like, I don't know, Garsab. This is my decision. Alhamdulillah. I love him. He teases me, and it's fun. We have that feeling. Like, even though I felt like I didn't have a father, like a biological father, I did have spiritual fathers. Like. I felt like, I had those father figures, like, Maulana Sulaiman Mullah, Maulana Sulaiman Choksi, Mufti Rida, all of these individuals, like, they guided me and they taught me not just about the subjects at hand, but also about life as well. Like, they would talk about life. There's like a YouTube channel where like some dad channel where he teaches you how to make popcorn. He teaches you how to do an oil change. He teaches you, and it really helped individuals who didn't grow up with a dad. Mm-hmm. That was like Mawachoksi for me. He was like give advice like that. He would be like, when you're deciding on your mahr, I understand there's Mahar Mithal, there's Mahar Fatimi and all that stuff, but I'm going to tell you my story. My story is that when I married my wife, I gave her 20 rupees as Mahar. And that 20 rupees lasted me the entire lifetime, up till the point where, she passed away. He said, there's so much barakah with little Mahar. Like, there's so much barakah. What was I talking about? Like the nursing, right?
Yeah.
Back to nursing. Everybody said yes. Everybody said go for it. I was like, okay, that's my thing now. I'm gonna go into nursing. Like, majority of them said yes. What's holding me back? And then I graduated. I went back. After that, I went to College of DuPage and I re-registered. I was already in their system, so the application wasn't that hard. I did all those gen eds, and subhanallah, man, those gen eds some of those were hard. But compared to nursing school is something else, man. It's the metric of grading, it changes. The competition within nursing school is huge, especially in a community college, because community college, you're getting a huge return on investment, right? Community college, you're just paying, like, let's say $2,000 per semester, roughly around that. And obviously the return, like I just said, like 60 to 100,000, you're getting huge. So definitely the return on that is huge. But at the same time, to keep up those grades, I remember the passing grade for nursing school is like 78%.
Oh, wow.
That's the passing grade. Anything below that, you have to repeat. You have to repeat that semester. You have to repeat that course. So it was difficult. And nursing exams, oh boy, like those who know, man, nursing exams are not pretty. They're pretty difficult. Even though teachers like to say, no, we're not going to trick you in this exam. You guys can do it. They will trick you in that exam. I'm telling you, they will trick you. And if I would say, like, if I would compare it with Alim course and regular gen ed courses, they're pretty linear, like, straightforward. You got to memorize this, you got to know this, and they would ask you a question, and you just, whatever you retrieved, you kind of place it on that exam, right? However, in nursing school, the thing about they emphasize is on critical thinking. So let's say that, okay, I'm learning about congestive heart failure, okay, more so left-sided heart failure. And I know the signs and symptoms. Some of the signs and symptoms are like, let's say, pulmonary edema, which means that you have fluid in the lungs, you have crackles in the lungs, you have your respiration rate increases, and possibly your heart rate increases, right? Because you're trying to compensate for the lack of oxygen in your body. So you have all of that stuff. But then the way that the nursing exams or the question would be designed will be like, okay, well, you have this 84-year-old woman coming into the clinic with all of these symptoms, high respiration rate, fluid in the lungs, crackles, but then she has blood-tinged sputum, meaning that she has, whenever she spits out or when she has phlegm sputum, there's some blood in it. Now, what would be the treatment for this individual? And they would give you certain treatments. And now you have to think, okay, does she really have CHF, or does she have pneumonia? Does she have lung cancer? What is she having? Or does she have tuberculosis? Like, now you're thinking, okay, you don't even know the disease process. If you don't know the disease process, how can you treat it? Right? So that's how it is. Like, you have to think a lot. You're having this internal discourses. And I think someone probably who is in med school probably will tell you something similar. I don't know. I can't speak for med schools, but for nursing school, that's how it is. And it's difficult. And one of the most dreadful things about nursing school is those SATA questions. SATA questions essentially it's a select all that apply. So normally your test questions are multiple choice, but SATA questions are like, you can select more than one choice as a correct answer. So you can have like 3 correct answers, 4 correct answers. You can possibly have all correct answers or one correct answer. And it's tricky because they try to make those answers look similar. But yeah, that's like some insights in nursing school. Nursing school is something else. I mean, alhamdulillah, I made it through.
MashaAllah. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy.
I mean, even nursing school was a struggle. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Every semester, every course that I would take, I was just like barely making that passing grade sometimes. And sometimes it would be scary at times, I would have to tell my wife, mentally prepare her that, maybe I might not make it this semester and I might have to repeat. And, I'm not making much. Like, this is a guy who's making, 10 grand, 20 grand as a CNA. I'm not working full time and I'm taking care of my wife. And now we recently have a kid and it's hard. Like, you have a lot of these responsibilities on your shoulder. And, my wife, subhanAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward her. It's, a lot of people have negativity against marriage. Like, a lot of people have, some negatives about marriage. But honestly, with my wife, I realized there's so many positives as well. Like, there's so many positives because during those times when I felt so doubtful, and so defeated, and I felt like a loser, even in nursing school, I told my wife, I told my mom, I explained it to them, and they're like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Even if you fail, 8 weeks, like, what is that, 2 months? We got this, okay? I know that you're going to eventually become a nurse. I see it in your eyes. And she believed in me. And I remember I was telling this to her that I might fail. And she was like, you know what, Abdullah, let's get out of this room. Let's get out of this house. Let's go to the forest preserve and let's go for a walk. And she was at the time, I think 9 months pregnant. She had a big belly and it was hard for her to walk. That forest park had approximately 1 mile, 2 miles or something. It was insane. We walked the whole thing and we were just talking. And it felt really good because she was there supporting me emotionally, mentally, to the point where I remember after that feeling, she was like, okay, what do you want me to test you on? And I'll help you on your courses. Like, I'll be your Quizlet. I'll be your index card. I'm going to tell you. So what medication you want me to help you with pharmacology? I'll help you with pharmacology. Even though she barely knew English, she would try to pronounce those. It was hard for her to pronounce those medication names, right? And she would do it. She would be like, okay, what's the mechanism of action of this corticosteroid? Okay, what's the mechanism? What's the indication? What's the, side effects, adverse effects? What's the contraindication? And she would go through all of this with me. And I remember afterwards, I started doing so well. And subhanAllah, man, it was the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, man. Pharmacology, even I can barely pronounce those medication names. Of course, man, it's a whole different language. But I was just like, I couldn't believe it. Like, my wife, like, literally, I wasn't alone doing this nursing school. That's what I felt like. And my wife told me, like, you know what, when you are on top, when you're in that pedestal, when in that pinning ceremony, so in nursing school, when you graduate, they give you that pin and then you have to do that. I think in our school, we have to do the oath of Florence Nightingale. That's the oath that we have to take as we're graduating. So she was like, when you go out there and if you do end up giving a speech, you better put my name up there. Like, you better put my name up there. So, if I end up not forgetting about you, I put your name here. So
this is nowhere close to the same platform, bro.
It's not the closest platform. Oh man, but subhanAllah, I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to her, and obviously to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and grace. It's difficult, I remember I had a similar conversation with Zayd, and I stole maybe a shortened version of my history about like Alim course and nursing school, and I remember it, Mawlana Zayd from New Orleans, right? The individual is taking care of Darul Arqam. I remember I was having this kind of conversation and he was just like, subhanAllah, Abdullah, like, it feels like you're just fighting through every year. Like, you're just fighting through and barely opening your doors and getting through. And I was like, yeah, that's how it was. It was not easy. It was not a smooth sailing trip. It was up and down. And, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, it was difficult. It was very hard. It was a hard, Alim course was hard. Nursing school is hard. But, there's a saying that nothing in this world that's worth having comes easy. And it shows, like, I have so much appreciation of Alim course. I have so much appreciation for nursing and individuals who are, ulama, who are nurses, who are doctors. Like, there's huge appreciation. Like, I appreciate that, like, they went through a lot. SubhanAllah. Yeah, that's my nursing story, I guess.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. If anyone wants to get in touch with Mawlana Abdullah, you guys can check out youtube.com/nursingiman.
Dude, there's only like one video on that. There's like one video.
I'll link it down below, inshallah. If you guys have any questions about nursing, definitely reach out to Mawlana Abdullah via his YouTube channel. Jazakallah khairan, Mawlana Abdullah, for sharing your story with us. Something that's not easy to talk about. MashaAllah, there's a lot of struggles that you went through, through your studies, through your family.
Alhamdulillah.
And now, MashaAllah, you're new studies that you're going to be able to conquer. May Allah Ta'ala reward you, reward your family, make it easy for you in every
Ameen.
endeavor that you embark upon. If anyone wants to get in touch, inshallah, they can go to youtube.com/nursingiman.
Please don't. Please don't. Please do not do that.
Jazakallah khairan for coming on, Sheikh.
وإياك وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.